All right, let's dive in. We're going to tackle the super complex world of state data privacy laws. For a lot of businesses, it feels like a giant maze. But don't worry, we are going to map out a clear 5-step plan to get you through it.
Does this look familiar? Yeah, if you're feeling even a little bit overwhelmed by all the different state privacy rules popping up, trust me, you are not alone. It's a landscape that is changing at a dizzying speed.
And just how fast are we talking? Well, by 2025, a whopping 20 US states will have their own big comprehensive privacy laws on the books. What that creates is this kind of crazy quilt of regulations that every business has to somehow stitch together.
So what's behind all this? Simple, people are demanding it. A huge 72% of Americans believe the government needs to get tougher on how their personal data is handled. And, lawmakers are definitely paying attention. And you really, really need to pay attention too, because the stakes here are incredibly high. We're not just talking about some extra paperwork. A major retailer just got slapped with a $1.2 million fine for noncompliance. That shows you these laws have very real teeth. Okay, I know. Hearing about 20 different laws and million-dollar fines can feel pretty intimidating. But here's the good news. It's not hopeless. There is a clear, totally manageable path forward. You don't have to stumble around in the dark. And this is that path. This 5-step plan is our roadmap for today. It's a really logical framework that's going to take you all the way from just understanding the problem to actually building a compliance program that lasts. So let's get started by really digging into the details of this maze. You can't figure out a way through it until you understand what the walls are made of, right? That's the key to building the right strategy. Now, this first point here, this is a total game changer for so many businesses. The laws apply based on where your customer lives, not where your office is. So if you've got customers in California or Florida, well, their laws now apply to you. That, plus the fact that the rules are always changing, is really the core challenge we're facing. Which brings us right to our foundation. You can't build a house on shaky ground, and you can't build a compliance program without this. We're going to tackle the first 2 steps here. First, know the laws, and second, know your own data. And here's a perfect example of that crazy quilt I was talking about. So in a state like California, the law might only kick in if you're a big enough company. But then you look at Nebraska, and their law applies to every business, no matter how small. This is exactly why you have to know the specific rules for every single state where you do business. Now, the good news is that most of these laws are built on the same core ideas. They give people a basic set of rights: the right to see the data you have on them, the right to get it deleted, the right to fix it if it's wrong, and, this one's huge, the right to opt out of you selling their data. And that leads us to probably the single most important rule in all of data privacy. It's so simple but so true. Before you can honor any of those rights, you've got to look in the mirror and figure out what data you actually have. This is the absolute bedrock of your entire program. So where on earth do you even start? Well, with a simple checklist, just like this one. You've got to answer these basic questions for every piece of personal data you have, whether it's customer emails or employee files, and pay really close attention to that question about who you share it with, because guess what? You're on the hook for what your vendors do with that data too. Okay, so you've done your homework, you've built that foundation. Now, it's time to put all that knowledge into action. In this section, we're going to cover steps 3 and 4, updating your actual policies, and then getting your people up to speed. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's about taking what you know and turning it into real things. You need a privacy policy that's actually clear and easy to understand. You need a process for when people ask for their data. And on the tech side, you need things like those do not sell links. And you have to honor signals from browsers, like the global privacy control, which is basically a user's way of automatically saying no thanks to tracking. And if you're wondering just how important honoring those signals is, well, let's go back to that fine. Remember that $1.2 million penalty we mentioned? It was specifically because a big company wasn't telling people clearly that they were selling data and they weren't honoring those automatic opt-out signals. These are not optional. This right here, this is a huge mindset shift. Getting this right isn't just a job for your lawyers or your IT team. It has to be a shared responsibility. From marketing to HR to customer service, everybody in the company has a part to play in protecting customer data. So how do you actually build that kind of culture? Well, it starts with making someone accountable. Give someone the job of being your privacy lead. Then it's all about training. And not just a one-time thing, but regular training for everybody, with extra sessions for the teams that handle the most data, like marketing. Most importantly, you have to create a culture where people feel safe raising their hand and reporting a mistake before it blows up into a crisis.
And that brings us to our final step. This is about making compliance a living, breathing part of your business. It's not a project you finish and then forget about. We're going to talk about how to monitor, adapt, and, believe it or not, turn all this hard work into a real competitive advantage. You know, the best way to think about this is like an annual cycle. It's not a one-and-done deal. Every year, you should be checking for new laws, re-auditing your data, tweaking your policies, and giving your employees a training refresher. It's just a continuous loop of getting better.
Honestly, the most efficient way to stay on top of all this is to be proactive. Privacy by design just means you're thinking about data protection from the very first day you start a new project, not trying to bolt it on at the last minute. It's like building the fire escape into the architect's blueprints instead of trying to staple it to the side of the building after it's already built. It saves so much headache. And if you need one more reason why all this matters beyond just avoiding fines, here it is. Look at this number. 71% of consumers say they would literally stop doing business with a company if it mishandled their data. Suddenly, this isn't just a legal cost, is it? It's a fundamental part of keeping your customers and protecting your brand. So what's the smartest play here? In this messy patchwork environment, what's the best long-term strategy? It's this right here. Instead of trying to juggle 20 different sets of minimum requirements, figure out which law that applies to you is the strictest. Then, build your program to meet that high standard. If you do that, you'll almost certainly satisfy all the others without even trying.
And that brings us to the end. I just want to leave you with this one question to chew on. After everything we've talked about, do you still see privacy compliance as just a cost of doing business? Or, in a world where customer trust is everything, could getting this right actually be your greatest competitive advantage? It's something to think about.